Hi, this is Gerard Daché, Executive Director of the Government Blockchain Association. We're doing our monthly meeting on the DC chapter meeting. This month we're doing blockchain and energy. It is Martin Luther King's birthday, so we have a sort of a small crowd today, but let's get it. We do this every month. Let's get into this. All right. So for those that don't know anything about GBA, we are a nonprofit organization. Our membership includes civil service in over 500 different government organizations at the local, state, national, and international level. We've got private sector companies of all sizes, professional members, and student members. We've got over 50 working groups. One of them is energy, and they consist of world-renowned experts, creating opportunities for all members to connect, communicate, and collaborate. So tonight we're going to be focusing on energy. We do have an energy working group that has put up over 50 energy-related posts. So one of the things about the GBA website is it is a ton of information about just about every topic. So if you type in energy or anything like that, you'll find tons of stuff. But one of these articles, I think, is from Derek, if I'm not mistaken. So 5 ways that blockchain is reshaping the energy industry, blockchain and carbon credit space. So we've got videos from Derek Cont, Cont actually. We got Doug Miller from the energy blockchain use cases. There's Derek Cont, head of policy for the Bitcoin Advocacy Project, and Decentralized Solar and Internet Project. So we just got a ton of videos on our YouTube channel. It's just a huge wealth of information on energy and all kinds of other events or topics. Let's take a minute, and we have somebody with us, Allison, who is an expert in this field. So we're going to cover some of this. One of the things that we want to talk about is the advanced, the growth of these distributed energy resources, right? So we now have a whole area or topic of demand-side management. So what we see in people's homes is all sorts of different devices to generate energy, to monitor energy use. We have distributed generation, so you'll see solar panels or generators on people's homes, and distributed storage. And so we also have this whole new group of people called distributed energy resource aggregators. So this has been growing. Now, one of the things that's been really interesting that we've been talking about lately is what's been going on in Ukraine. Definitely showing a need for distributed energy. So before we had independent system operators, right? And they were responsible for scheduling the resources and the distribution of all the energy. Now we're moving into this model that is a distributed DSO, and distributed system operators, right? So they're dealing with the DER aggregators, the retail markets, and now what we're actually seeing, Charlton, is a distributed network owners. So the entire energy system is becoming decentralized. So let's talk about this concept of decentralization, right? Distributed energy resource aggregators are exploring how local energy devices can participate in power systems and earn compensation. Utilities are facing meaningful shifts as consumers become partners, and the new term that we're seeing is prosumers. And the distributed system operator model is really driving how utilities can manage more distributed and participatory systems. And utilities are looking for ways that local resources can offer services to wholesale markets as well as to support the distribution systems. So this is going. Now we're seeing energy prices are increasing, right? Driven by higher than normal gas prices, supply and demand, we'll talk about that, and provisioning costs, and then all kinds of market disruptions. So I don't have to tell you, if you watch the news, you see what's going on. So these energy companies have a trade-off, right? Do they invest in the technologies that is going to allow them to move into this distributed system, right? Or are they going to try to keep prices low? So one of the areas where blockchain has a significant opportunity to reduce costs is in provisioning, right? And this is really all about supply chain. So we always talk about blockchain is very powerful in supply chain. So this concept of tracking equipment and building materials throughout the entire chain of custody is one of the ways that energy companies are looking to reduce energy costs. One of the GBA member companies is a company called Energy Web. They've got a customizable solution that packages self-sovereign identity, access management, all kinds of tools. They're just a great resource. And we see, people are always saying, yeah, but what's really happening? Well, British Petroleum and a number of others, they've done a pilot project. They've yielded a 30 to 40% cost reduction in gas trades. And what they're doing is they're monitoring the data, labor data. They're making it more visible. They're reducing settlement delays and inter-system communications. And then managing demand. So what we're seeing is as these new, we need new market mechanisms to deal with energy consumption. What we have right now is we have time differentiated rates, which nudge consumption away from peak hours. But the problem is that we lack the granularity for those things. So these multi-hour pricing blocks are just not adequate for sending market signals. What we really need is real-time accounting, and blockchain and smart contracts basically allow for that. Blockchain technology can be used to distribute ledgers, to track individual energies and behaviors and reward it. And as far as carbon credits, PG&E and BMW are working currently right now on ways of managing carbon credits for electric vehicle drivers. Right, so it's all based on the energy profile, because it's amazing how, well, we'll get to EV vehicles and its impact on energy. So there's a tidal wave of data being collected from smart meters, IoT devices, distributed energy resources, and all kinds of new monitoring devices. The problem is that all of these data sets are not interoperable with each other. So we don't really have an ability to transform this massive amount of data into actionable insights. And another thing that is a big opportunity for blockchain is grid resilience, right? So storing and transporting energy, right, oil, gas, electricity, is what the grid's all about. It's very heavily regulated. It requires all kinds of disaster and risk mitigation and infrastructure maintenance. Blockchain technology supports the multi-stakeholder information sharing, especially as far as asset tracking is concerned. So at our last event, so you guys were all at our last event except for him. You guys remember Brian Kavanaugh? Did you guys get a chance to hear him? So one of the things he said, and I pulled this off of his video, that hostile actors are increasing their understanding of U.S. critical infrastructure, its interconnected nature, and the vulnerabilities of our system. And the U.S. adversaries are mapping pipelines and energy grids to plan and execute attacks on the critical utilities like energy. And so he said that all before, yeah, right. And now what are we seeing happening in Ukraine, right? They can't win on the battlefield, so what are they doing? They're knocking out the energy infrastructure. Yeah, Allison, did you want to say something?
Just that there have been a couple smaller instances in the States in the last month or two.
Yeah. Well, tell me and I'll repeat it.
I'm sorry?
Tell me and I'll repeat them. I mean,
knocking out power generation in small areas.
Yeah.
It's not that.
No, no, it clearly is a vulnerability. So the U.S. Department of Energy has its Oak Ridge National Laboratory, and so what they've done is they've put together a project, and what it does is it monitors the network and the infrastructure. And so it basically takes hashes of the way things are supposed to be. And if anybody tampers with it and the hashes are different, then it immediately can notify the system operators. And this actually happened on the southern border, right? People had hacked into the data feeds, right, on the southern border. So when the I forgot what the name of the organization is, ICE or whatever, when they're monitoring the borders, Customs and Border Security, right, they're looking at a data feed, a video feed of the border, and they think that what they're looking at is real time. They're actually looking at videos from 2 or 3 weeks ago, right? So this is something that's definitely happening. But this project that they're working on essentially would help identify any anomalies in the grid. And a lot of these things kind of interrelate. Data management. So you guys are all familiar with ESGs, right? Yes, no? Which is what? Environmental, social, and governance. Anyway, so I don't know if are you familiar with the United Nations SDGs, right? Sustainable Development Goals. they're closely related. So let me explain what ESGs are and its impact on energy and reporting. So the ESG is actually, it's an investment strategy. It actually came out of BlackRock. And they said, we believe that, that if we're going to be making investments of millions and billions of dollars, that the companies we're investing in should have some social responsibility. They shouldn't have a terrible carbon footprint, right? They should do some things that are good to society. And so they actually built out this whole framework of reporting. So it's not just financial reporting, it's also things that include things like diversity, inclusion, environmental impact, just a whole wide range of social metrics, social and governance. And so what that's done now is, and it doesn't just apply to the company that they're investing in, it applies to everybody up and down the stream from that company. So if you're an oil company, right, then you have to create reporting on how people who are driving cars and using your gas and the impact that they're having on the environment, right? So it's much broader. So what's happened now is because it's taking such a, and BlackRock is the largest holder of assets globally, right? So this is also now moving into the political space with the United Nations and the SDGs and the World Economic Forum, and it's just become a sort of massive thing. And so what it's done is it's put these requirements on energy companies to report on how green their energy is, right? Including their suppliers and everybody sort of up and down the chain. So this is a place, again, you've got multiple stakeholders, very, very diverse folks that have to exchange information. So retailers and distributed system operators are developing new business models that encourage customers to become prosumers, right? Regulatory requirements to consume energy from local green sources, and all this energy has to be integrated with the billing system. So again, is this a place where blockchain makes sense? Absolutely. Are people doing it? Absolutely. Another challenge that we have with the data management is that grids are becoming way more diverse and dynamic. They're changing so quickly. So EnergyWeb has created a system to support this, because the problem is that as your grid changes so quickly and it becomes so diverse, you have all kinds of new risks associated with maintaining the point-to-point integration between thousands of participants, scaling existing systems to interface with an ever-increasing array of stakeholders, right? You've got the assets to the aggregators, you've got the regulators and the retailers. And so the system that EnergyWeb put together streamlines the communications and data processing between organizations without a central broker. And so it works with any protocol, any use case in the energy field. It's really phenomenal, the solution. And demand is increasing, right? So we're seeing more and more data centers going up. We're seeing a lot more communication, even video games, right? So social media, the demand for energy is exploding. Electric vehicles, right? This year there are 70 new models, right? Governments are issuing tax incentives. There's fleet purchase incentives, so the adoption is exploding. And EV chargers can increase a home's peak load from 40 to 100%. So this is stressing transformers. It's creating unpredictable demand. The reliability is impacted. The grids are not prepared for this massive explosion in use. And again, very unstructured, undisciplined. There's just not a whole lot of visibility. So we've got unmanaged EV charging loads during peak hours can significantly increase power and supply infrastructure, because what happens is the power companies have got to build up the infrastructure to deal with the lowest peak demands. Right, so if they can, spread that out, then they don't have to invest as much money in infrastructure costs. And one of the problems right now is that there's a limited visibility between the utilities, the power suppliers, and the demand side. Right, they just don't have the visibility. So utilities lack visibility into voltage conditions and loads at transformers and other midline equipment. The electric vehicle adoption and other demand changes load profiles. Understanding the impact on midline equipment is crucial to ensuring reliability. And without visibility, utilities may be forced to overspend on overly conservative upgrades of thousands of pieces of equipment. So Power Ledger is another GBA member company that also offers solutions in this. So we got Energy Web and Power. I'll give you a QR code. You can download the whole presentation. But yeah,
Question about the electric vehicle.
yeah. What's your
Is an
question?
electric vehicle better for the environment than a gas car?
I'm not in a position to be able to answer that. What I'm really kind of focusing on is how is blockchain suitable to manage the changing, to manage the power grids, right? I'm just not qualified to answer whether an electric vehicle is better for the environment. I mean, a lot of people would say yes, some people would say no. I'm just not qualified to answer that. So in summary, right, the supply chain starts with the extraction or capture of natural resources, and then includes all the processes to transfer them into multiple final products or sell those products to end users. Energy products are directed towards different customers, have different environmental regulations, require various methods of transportation. Blockchain enables supply chains to optimize wide-scale and multi-product coordination. And the ability of blockchain technology platforms to record and track supply chains could stop an immense amount of waste in the system. And platforms that utilize smart contracts can replace all kinds of time, energy, and money currently required from all the stakeholders in the process. So, Allison, you probably have more energy experience than I do on this subject, right? I was able to research some stuff. Any thoughts on this? Yes, no? Anything I left out? What do you think?
I think you broke it down well with extraction. That there's a lot of opportunity there. The grid is a mess.
Yeah.
And especially if you're looking at it globally and trying some geopolitical issues. Electric vehicles depends on your source of electricity. If you're talking about the environment, it just depends how you're powering that plant. How you view whatever's, how that material is being turned into energy and what.
So are there places in the world where the electric grid is not being overtaxed? So sometimes in America, like our brownouts.
Hey, Allison, you want to just come up here for a second? Because you made some really good points, and I like well, no, just come up here because the point you made, and then Kathy, I'll repeat your question.
The caveat is I'm a Texan, so yes, I'm very well aware of brownouts and blackouts, because Texas is on its own grid, which is not the case with most of the rest of the country. And the grid has been overwhelmed a couple times. Just recently it was, but then in February of 2021, I believe, the state was out of power for 3 or 4 days minimum.
Which state?
Texas.
Texas.
Yeah, so, and that's, if there's a way to connect either to other grids or even to Mexico, that provides an opportunity.
And California was having all those rolling rounds
Yeah.
as well.
And they're even connected, but they're connected to other states that are
Right.
similar. So, yeah, there are a lot of opportunities.
And you made a good point about extraction, right? I didn't even cover that, the opportunity.
You touched it a little bit, but yeah.
I touched it a little bit, but there's a tremendous amount of opportunities for using supply chain in the extraction process.
I believe so. An example, if you look at county, state, federal data, and then you look at company data, it won't be the same for what they produce.
Yeah.
So just a simple way to make sure that the information is correct would be helpful. And that's just baseline, that's the fundamental level.
Kath, did you have another question?
Yeah, so my question is, I think the thrust is environmental, but if the electricity grids are already overtaxed, is it a benefit to move more things onto the electrical grid, or would it be better to keep them on the gas, the natural gas energy?
Think about it, you have your base load and your peak load. And so if you have a base load source that just sort of runs here, and then you have a peak load that you can ramp up and down, and these can be different sources. That's one of the things that I think could help that movement. But like if you're charging an electric vehicle, you're charging at night when the usage is lower, so you're not, in theory, it's not causing the same type of strain on a grid.
Unless you're charging it for work.
Yes, and then that and if you're charging it during the middle of a day of a road trip, that also adds to something. But if it's at night, in theory, that 40% is going when the lights are out, in theory.
No, that's my question is too. This is a very interesting subject, something I think about in the context of Africa, and some of the solutions there that we look at are stackable, like individual solar units where people are using more so solar energy and batteries, and then you're able to integrate into a more like off-grid grid type of opportunity. And I know that's not as scalable, and at the same time, not as the same amount of electricity can be powered through such a situation, but with such advancement as the solar-powered windows, for examples, and things like that, the potential of these types of opportunities, where do we see the ability for localized, like harvesting of electricity being able to contribute to a larger grid?
That's interesting, because I can't fully answer that. What I will say is if you have an established grid, there are some, we'll just use the US for right now. There's some states where you can put up solar panels and then you can hook back into the grid and you get paid for your extra. You're getting paid in some states, market, but you're not maintaining the infrastructure. So that is something to think about. And if you're starting from scratch, who's putting that initial infrastructure in?
Yep.
But like you could, this building could run off of, like you could do the small scale and then have them interconnected, but it depends on how far the distances cover, But I mean, I first got into this about 15 years ago, and you were losing, these are really rough numbers, but you were losing, I think it was somewhere between 60 and 80% of transmission lines with wind. It's nowhere near that. Like, it's so much less than that now. I don't know the actual figures, but you had these wind farms out in West Texas that were just losing most of the energy produced, but now that's not the case.
They were losing it?
Losing it in transmission. So like from middle of nowhere, West Texas to wherever they were going, you were losing a lot. That's not, it's dropped a lot. So.
Well, and the key really there is distribution, is decentralization, right? Because now what we're seeing with these decentralized storage capabilities, right? So it's not just production; it's also the storage. And when you can create these peer-to-peer trades, right, that don't have to go through some sort of central authority, this is where all the opportunity is.
Exactly, Gerard.
Yeah, you have solar, you have
peer-to-peer
wind.
trades would be one house has so if one house has solar panels, they can trade with another house that has solar panels, and they don't have to go to Dominion Energy.
Or wind. Like, so if one farm has a couple windmills, and then one farm has solar, and it's been cold.
And they can share with each other.
Right.
You store it in
Wow.
On the grid as well.
That's not possible.
So,
All
so
right.
I have a question for you, Allison and Gerard.
Yeah.
Is there a way that blockchain could be used to to help communities during natural disaster? Look at Puerto Rico when they lost power for how many weeks, and we're just suffering. Is there a way is there a way that if the grid was somehow built on a blockchain network, that they would have access to energy from another, from some sort of other, as opposed to having to go through that central source like you were just talking about?
Kath, can you come up here for a second? Because you got some information, or actually you can speak from there. I think we're going to see a tremendous amount of innovation coming out of Ukraine, right? Because of exactly the attacks on their energy grid and their innovations specifically regarding decentralization. Kath, you want to talk a little bit about what Ukraine's doing in terms of being kind of a leader in distributed and decentralized systems?
Okay, so for what I know, since Ukraine has a lot of coders and a lot of brilliant developers, they are building a grid to become the the tech center of Europe, and it is being financed by Switzerland at this time. So now, in the middle of the war, they are building this.
And it's like a decentralized.
It's a decentralized grid that which their plan is for it to cover Europe.
Is it like what Charlton is talking about, the smaller, if it's solar, if it's whatever it is, but just smaller setups? Is that?
I
It
think it's
sounds
an
like that's probably what
I think
it
it's an
is.
entire decentralized framework, right? That energy essentially could become a part of, but
Yeah.
my understanding is.
Yes,
it's-
and energy is a
Yeah.
big deal with it because obviously Russia is the source of a lot of their energy, which they don't want to be getting from Russia anymore. So they're looking for ways to get energy outside of Russia.
So this is this is a Europe-wide thing, not just the fact that their infrastructure is being destroyed, but recognizing that Europe as a whole is wholly dependent on Russia.
Because in 2008, Russia turned off the natural gas for Ukraine, and a lot of people died.
Yeah.
Might have been 2009, I think it was 8. But that started the north and south, like the sewer lines, but they're still reliant on.
Yeah, exactly.
Who wants to rely on them? Anything.
Well, I think I just wanted to get back to your point before, Gerard, about the ability to use decentralized concepts outside of just, currencies and things. Creating decentralized energy is something that's the world's been needing to figure out. And to your point, you always have to create a funding source. That's the catch-22. And looking at the ability to leverage like DeFi money markets and things of that nature to provide liquidity in some of these areas where it's hard to get money into, like you said, a war-torn area. So a place like Switzerland that's very financially savvy, they're able to, really be very nuanced in how you're navigating these things. But it's very interesting to hear the collaboration between the financial markets and the energy market, if there's a way to, again, tokenize these.
Especially an established financial market.
For sure. It's evolving the world.
Yeah.
Yeah, however, I'm sorry. But Swiss Bank just lost $149 billion.
Yeah.
So
It's
I
in
don't
their
think that
it's in their
anyone is
couch cushion
financially
somewhere.
established at this particular time during the domino fall. Not even Switzerland.
Let me get on this. Where do we go from here? Because I think this is really cool. Thank you
I
so much,
agree.
Allison. All right, so we need a whole new paradigm. This is exactly what we're talking about, right? We need new vocabularies. I was on the phone the other day with some folks talking about using decentralization in managing the supply chain of nuclear fuel. And they say, listen, when people think about nuclear, they still have in their head that it's the 1980s and they remember Chernobyl and 3 Mile Island. We need to have an entirely new vocabulary. So instead of calling it nuclear, we need to call it fission. Instead of calling them reactors, we need to call them burners, right? And so they're actually trying to change the paradigm by changing the vocabulary. We need new technologies. All these things that we're just talking about requires investment and new technologies. And we need new relationships, which is where the GBA comes in. This is one of the reasons why we're going to be focusing on energy, the energy working group, to create those kind of relationships. And we need new standards, which is why we're doing the blockchain maturity model. And I'll go through this really, really quick because I know most of you guys are familiar with this. But the blockchain maturity model allows us to evaluate a blockchain solution along 11 different characteristics, right? These are attributes that any blockchain solution should have, right? Distribution, governance, identity management, infrastructure sustainability, interoperability, performance, privacy, reliability, resilience, security, and synchronization. It took us 2 years to work on, to put this model together. And in part because it is technology agnostic. When we looked at the requirements, we said, does it work for Bitcoin? Does it work for Ethereum? Does it work for Hyperledger? Does it work for Hashgraph? Does it work for IOTA? Oh, it doesn't? Let's go back to the drawing board. So we really needed to make sure that the technology was good, whether it was a decentralized system or maybe a permissioned blockchain. Well, they should all be decentralized, but permission or permissionless. But what we also realized is that in addition to the core requirements, every industry basically has its own unique set of requirements, right? And we'll take identity management as an example, right? If you're doing identity management in a banking financial services supplement, you have to do AML or KYC. But if you're doing it for voting, then you have to have permanent severability between the voter and the vote. So as a result, or if you're doing in healthcare, say clinical trials, you need to know that the data came from this patient, that you need to know their age, their sex, their family history. You just can't know their name, their address, or where they live, right? Or their name, their address, or anything else. So identity management requirements are different depending on the industry, and that's why we're coming up with these supplements specific for these different industries. And the energy BMM supplement is one of the next ones we're starting to work on.
I have a question.
Yeah,
Who's building the energy BMM supplement?
the energy working group.
Who's the head of the energy working group?
Well, we're actually working on that right now. So,
Allison's busy.
I will tell you who some of the participants in the energy working group are. Right, we got the Clean Energy Buyers Association, Power Ledger. We got folks from the U.S. Department of Energy, Taconal Energy. They're actually out of India. Carbon Meta Technologies is out of California. Green Energy is out of I want to say like Switzerland or somewhere in that area. And then Energy Web, I'm not sure where they're located. So we've got a whole bunch of companies in that space. And so we're trying to put that team together, find a team leader for it to build the energy working group. So that's what we're doing with regard to energy. Just real quick, here's our schedule for the rest of the year. So in January we did blockchain and energy infrastructure. February we're going to do identity management. And I don't know if I mentioned this before, but Dino Cataldo Delacio is with the United Nations. He leads the United Nations Digital Transformation Group, and in that capacity, he coordinates the activities of all of the UN programs, the CIOs, CTOs of all the UN programs, including the World Food Program, the World Health Organization, the World Trade Organization, all those programs. Dino coordinates the technical activities, sharing the best practices and the lessons learned. And he has volunteered to lead our identity management working group. He built the very first blockchain solution for the United Nations and is now building an identity management system for UN employees globally. So he's probably, with regards to identity management, he's probably one of the most qualified people in the world to lead a blockchain, a government blockchain association identity management working group. So we're I can ask him. He's come down for other things. He lives in New York. I can ask him. Maybe we'll go up there and do it live from there. I don't know. But and then our voting and elections working group. That's February. March we're going to do vital records and health data management. In April we're going to do revenue collection, focusing on tax, bonds, fees, and lotteries. On May we're going to talk about the spending side. So public fund distribution, grants, disbursements, entitlements, financial regulation and oversight. That's also when we're going to do the May conference. One of the projects we're about to start is working with the Assistant Secretary of State for acquisitions to make changes to the FAR, the Federal Acquisition Regulation, to allow smart contracts and digital assets to be used in government contracting. So, again, we're going to make recommendations to changes to the FAR. That's no guarantee.
You should get Allison involved in that one, smart contracts.
In June, we're going to do community health. And then July, we're doing social services, which is going to be education, family, financials, health, housing, all that. August, we're going to do resource management, so the management of parks, land, water, environmental buildings. Incidentally, we just announced a new course. We haven't completed it yet. We just announced a new course. We'll be delivering it next month on blockchain and sustainable development goals. So September, we're going to do transportation. October, we're going to do land titling, licensing and permitting. November, we're going to do law enforcement and judicial. And December, we're going to do budget accountability, transparency, and auditing. And we have a brand new PMO that we're standing up and working with our Smart Cities Working Group. The focus for 2023 is going to be on state and local government. So every month we're going to be inviting CIOs and CTOs from cities, counties, states, municipalities, provinces to attend an online version of this, right? That we do It's on the calendar. We do it every month. And what we want them to do is know that every month they can come to this online meeting, right? And every month they're going to learn about a different topic that is relevant to a government's, a state and local CIO, CTO. These are all topics that are completely applicable to state and local government technology leaders. And so we want to see them come in every month, right? We'll be developing relationships with those folks. And we actually have a program where we can do a seminar for their city, county, and state, identify what their needs are, and then flesh those requirements out and send them to the GBA members. That's going to be pretty exciting. Our next conference is the Future of Money Governance Law. Kath, do you want to say anything about this?
Okay, so the future of money governance law, basically it's focusing on money. We usually have this one in January, but we have decided to bump it to the May, and lots of reasons. The weather's nicer. But this one will focus basically on money. It's a 2-day event at the National Press Club. We're talking to banks and finance people, lawyers, people in law, and of course a lot of government people. For every event, we reach out to about 125 embassies to get international representation at these events. And there will be an evening reception called Kryptonite, which is basically a James Bond spy party. That's all I'm going to tell you about that. So this was going to be talking about how the cryptocurrency and the fallout of FTX and all of the changes that are happening in money, how they're going to be affected by the law and regulation, et cetera, which is going to affect everybody because everybody's into money.
Vice President of Global Policy for Circle. We've got the Vice Chair of the National Credit Union Administration who's going to be a speaker. He's part of a 3-person panel that basically has oversight over every credit union in the country.
Yeah. And one more thing I would like to say about the future of money governance and law. Are you done? Did I interrupt you? I
You did interrupt me,
apologize.
but that's okay. I'll interrupt you right back.
I'm so sorry. So this one does have the annual achievement awards, which we do every year. We usually do it in January, but we're doing it in May, as I said. So the annual achievement awards, there are 4 awards given out: leadership, innovation, social impact, and courage as it pertains to blockchain technology. And so I encourage everybody to think about somebody that you know that might be exceptional in one of those areas. Today's Martin Luther King Day. He was definitely exceptional in all 4 of those. But the people that win, they get the 3 top nomination. The past winners get to go through all of the submissions, and then they narrow it down to 3. Then the top 3 get sent out to the entire GBA community so that we can demonstrate a voting app, a mobile voting app. That was another reason why we're doing this. And so the winners don't know who won, but all top 3 nominees for each of the 4 categories are invited to come, and then the winner will be announced from stage, and then they get to go up and get their crystal thing.
So
it's pretty cool.
Past winners have included the president of El Salvador.
Yes,
right?
President Nayib Bukele won Courage last year, and the ambassador from El Salvador accepted the award in his stead. So it's kind of a big deal. We're asking somebody to please nominate President Zelensky. Jordan and I apparently aren't allowed to nominate people, but if somebody would just please nominate him, I'm sure he would win. So that's that for that.
All right.
It'll be cool.
And I think that pretty much does it. If you want a copy of the presentation, you can hit that QR code. And with that, I'd like to thank you for participating in the January GBA Washington, D.C. chapter meeting. And again, we'll be doing this every month, and looking forward to seeing you.